The New Orleans Pelicans have played 8 quarters against the Portland Trail Blazers, and 6 of them have been pretty bad. I'll tell you exactly why the Pelicans struggled both on offense and defense despite going 1-1 over the weekend, but also why they're going to be just fine. It's the Monday episode of Locked On Pelicans. Let's go.
You are Locked On Pelicans, your daily New Orleans Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another edition of Locked On Pelicans, the daily podcast covering your favorite team, the New Orleans Pelicans and NBA, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, available wherever you get your podcasts and available on YouTube. I'm your host, Pelicans Insider, credential member of the media, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter. Here with y'all on this Monday. Pelicans go 1-1 over the weekend, 2 games against the Portland Trail Blazers, a win, a loss, 6 bad quarters. The offense doesn't look great. The defense is really struggling. We're going to look at both of those in today's show. I'm going to tell you how they can fix a few things and get right back on track. So please subscribe. I'm even off today. And of course, thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast for a reason, breaking down everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Join over 10,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. So quick little programming note. I am in the new Locked On Pelicans studio in a new room here, but we're using a green screen right now because I haven't brought the jersey, the picture over to the new place and everything like that. It is a little echoey. I got to get the acoustics right in here, put some, foam on the walls and all that. So roll with me, bear with me as I kind of get through the move and everything. But we're here in New Orleans, the new home of Locked On Pelicans. So if it's a little bit off, that's why. If it's real bad, let me know in the comments down below. But I'm trying my best to dial it in for y'all. You know who also needs to be dialing it in? The New Orleans Pelicans. 1-1 over the weekend, but 6 of those 8 quarters were pretty bad against Portland. Now, I want to lead with this. We're going to go offense, defense, and a couple of other things in today's show. They're 2-1. The sky is not falling. And when you really look at these games, beyond just looking at the box score, there's reasons why things are happening. And some of those are pretty easy to fix. We'll get into the defensive rebounding because I don't think that's as bad or like you need a new center as much as some people might be saying. We'll get into the specifics on defense and what's happening there. But let's start with the offensive struggles. And first and foremost, let's lead with this. DeJounte Murray's hurt. He's out. We look at this and we're like, oh my goodness, this is a disaster, right? They're not playing well because they're running the same offense they did last season with the same players when that wasn't good enough, right? We knew that. We've talked about that a lot. And one of the things we had said was they need a point guard. The team basically said we need a point guard. They went out and got a point guard in DeJounte Murray. And then he got hurt. Yeah, you spent all of training camp, preseason, putting him in running your team. And then he goes out and gets hurt. And yeah, it's going to throw you off, particularly in the immediate aftermath. So the fact that they managed to win a game with a really good second half against the Blazers on Friday, more on that in a second here, is a really good thing and something we should be happy about. But they're 2-1. The sky isn't falling here just yet. And good news is most of the things that we're seeing are very fixable. So let's start with the offensive struggles beyond just missing DeJounte Murray, which cannot be overstated enough. Right now, the spacing is terrible for this team. There's a reason that I and others and the coaching staff in the front office want this team to shoot a ton of threes. They need the spacing. It's not happening, and it doesn't look good right now. In this game, the one on Sunday, the 125-103 loss to the Portland Trail Blazers, New Orleans shot 8 of 29. They didn't even take 33s, so fewer than they took per game last season. 8 for 29 is 27.6%. You're going to lose when that's the case. When Portland goes 14 for 35, 40% from 3, you're going to lose. That's a 21-point difference from 3-point range. That's it, right? Give the Pelicans 21 points here. They're at 124 right in this game where one or two little things can kind of turn it. That's a big reason why they looked so bad. On Friday, the game they won, in the first half, they shot poorly. They were 4 of 14, 28.6%. They looked terrible. Second half, they shot the three better, 8 for 18, 44.4%. They came back and smoked the Blazers in the second half by 12 to win this game. Sometimes it's as simple as that. We don't always need to overcomplicate basketball. They need the shooting, whether it's just the math game to keep up with their opponent, but also for Zion Williamson. Zion Williamson, these first two games that he's played, has felt like a non-factor. The spacing is a real big part of that. Now, it's on Zion too, but the spacing is a really big part of it. Go to this second game against the Portland Trail Blazers. Donovan Clingan was just living in the paint like he was back in college, and there's no defensive 3-second call whatsoever. That's not going to, Zion's going to struggle to score no matter what. He can drive and attack and he can score around those guys. But when multiple people are helping off in the paint, there's not a whole lot you can do. And you start to see Zion Williamson kind of reverting to what he does, which is just drive, bulldoze barrel straight ahead. The ball gets stripped. It ends up being a turnover when he attacks, right? Like that's what we end up seeing happening to him a lot in these type of games when he's just trying to I've got to just force it myself. It's why he was 3 of 12 here. Now it's on him too. Look, if they're going to sag off you in the paint like that, shoot some threes. He didn't take a 3-point attempt in this one, and he only took one the other night. Maybe take a couple of threes because they're going to leave you that space on the perimeter. And in the first quarter of the second game on Sunday, you saw what makes this really work. CJ McCollum had the ball. They kicked it to Zion, who's a little bit further to the left on the wing. Zion took 2 steps forward like he's going to drive. CJ's defender sagged off to help contain that drive. Zion just zipped a pass to CJ McCollum, who's wide open for catch and shoot 3, made it. That's really easy, and that's what Zion's going to do for you. So these players need to take their shots. You need that spacing, and they don't have it right now. It's why Hawkins is getting so much run. More on him in the third segment here. It's why CJ is playing pretty well because he's getting wide open looks from 3. It's why the Pelicans want that magic number to be 43s per game. You didn't even get 30 in this one. That has to change. It's why they wanted Brandon Ingram to change his shot profile to take some of those other shots because it just wasn't working. He only took 3 in this game. That's, after he had a really good game the other night where he went 4 of 9. Why are you only taking 3 3-point attempts? There's ways to create that. That needs to change. They need the shooting. They didn't have it in this game, and that's a real big part of the reason why the Pelicans lost. The offense wasn't good, but in particular, the 3-point shooting wasn't there. They were 1 of 13 in the first half. That's 7%. Things are a little bit better in the second half here, but at that point, they couldn't get stops on the defensive side of the ball. They were 7 for 16 in the second half, but Ingram only took 1 3. He's got to take those. We saw this last year. He'll have a game where he shoots really well from 3, and then the next game he doesn't. And this is a guy who I said played great in the first game. And I thought in the game against Portland in that first game there, he hit the game winner. I'm fine with that shot there because he was shooting the threes. That was a big part of why the Pelicans got back into that game when they didn't before, was him going 2 of 4 in the second half. They need the shooting. It was also Hawkins too in that second half. He was really great, 4 of 7 for 22 points in the second half of that first game, which is when the Pelicans came back to win. They need that. So the shooting, the offense can get better. But not when you're just shooting yourselves in the foot with dumb turnovers, which they did a ton of in that second game. So many unforced errors. They only had 9 turnovers, I think, in the first game. In the second game, they had 14. It was 14 to 19. So they won the turnover battle in the first game. In the second game, it was a little bit closer than that. It was 15 to 16. So they didn't win the turnover battle. That stuff matters. They need that, and they didn't do a good job of that in this game. And you saw so many times them just get stripped at the top of the 3-point line that just were easy transition buckets for the opponent. That's not going to work. You're just gifting them points at that point in time. You can't do that. They need to fix that. And even if they're going to be shooting well, it's not going to matter if you can't get stops. And the Pelicans right now aren't getting stops. There's a big issue on the defensive side of the ball. And frankly, I think that's more important than the offensive issues that they're having. The good news is the offensive stuff should get better with Murray with better shooting. And they have guys that can shoot. They just need to do that. That'll open things up. Then Zion needs to just like assert his dominance and basically wake up a little bit more. Defensively, they're not getting stops now. It's not because of the defensive rebounding as much as you might think. Let's break that down and why I think this is a bigger issue, but also a more fixable issue. That's coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to take on all the NBA and NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on all the NFL games and NBA games in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. And all you need to do is just go visit FanDuel.com to join today. I hope there's odds on will Dennis Allen get fired. We'll see the odds in a day for the Pelicans taking on the Golden State Warriors, but the Warriors are going to be favored. I think the Pelicans are going to figure some things out before their game on Tuesday, and I'm going to be feeling good about that one. And you're going to get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. You can do that over at FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports book partner of the NFL. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Join over 10,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well. And don't forget the new Locked On Pelicans newsletter. Your favorite podcast now has a newsletter introducing the Locked On Pelicans daily newsletter. One stop for ultimate team and league coverage delivered right to your inbox. Sign up for free now at LockedOnDaily.com. That's LockedOnDaily.com and start your day with the all-new free Locked On Pelicans newsletter. Let's beat those big market teams. I'm trying to keep as much of an eye on the stats with it as I can. I want to beat the Lakers. I want to beat New York. I want to beat Boston. I want to beat all of those cities and show that Pelicans fans are turning out. So please subscribe to the Locked On Pelicans daily newsletter over at LockedOnDaily.com. It's not just an article on the Pelicans in there each day, but it's also league-wide coverage from some really great writers that we've brought on board and everything. So you really got to give it a try here. So let's get into what I think is the bigger issue for the Pelicans right now. The offense, there's enough talent here that they'll be fine. You know, and the way they kind of view their identity is on the defensive side of the ball. But you want to know what sucks right now? What's real rough is the Pelicans on the defensive side of the ball, and I'm genuinely shocked by that sort of thing. They are not looking good on that side of the ball at all right now. It's leading to defensive rebounding issues where the problems are starting. So let's look at that right now, because this is also something that is a little bit easier to fix, I think, when it comes to it. I want to pull up their defensive rating because it can't be good, right? Somehow they have the 12th best defensive rating despite being 2-1. But that's too early. There's a small sample size when it comes to it. The defense has been bad. So what's happening here is a lack of dribble penetration. That's the really big issue here, and it bears it out in another stat. Right now, guards, Scoot Henderson, Zach LaVine, at times Lonzo Ball in that Bulls win too, are getting the ball on the perimeter, on the three-point line, and then they're just driving right at the basket, and the Pelicans are not containing the basketball at all. And this is really bad. This is something they have excelled at under head coach Willie Green. One of the reasons why I've said I don't know if they truly need a rim protector is they just don't let you get into the paint in the first place. If you don't let the opponent get into the paint in the first place, you're not going to need rim protection because they're just not there. But now they're getting there, and that's becoming a problem for New Orleans, and the defense is breaking down as a result, and it's leading to the Pelicans getting killed, particularly in this game against the Portland Trail Blazers on Sunday. So after a player drives and, say, gets to the rim, they're either going to score or they're going to kick the ball out for a wide open catch and shoot three. And you've seen this repeatedly now. That first half against the Chicago Bulls, they were living inside the paint and scoring. And it's not because they were posting up, bigs playing with their back to the basket, Shaq-like, and scoring that way. Where you would go, the Pelicans need a center. That's not it. It's guards driving. Your big man's not going to matter as much there. The Pelicans switch. So as long as the big can defend on the perimeter, as opposed to rim protection, you can be okay. That's containing the dribble and not letting them get into the teeth of the defense, not letting the ball handler get into the paint. And then once they get into the paint and they've blown by, or that first guy is just not defended, the team is now in a rotation situation. That means someone else needs to rotate over to try and cut that man off driving to the basket, which means whoever he was defending is now open. So the ball handler gets the ball in that guy, usually in the short corner for a corner three. If the Pelicans make another rotation over and then someone goes to cover that guy, then they just get it to the top of the three-point line. It's just swinging passes around. Really easy offense, right? That's what's happening here. And so the Pelicans are giving up open three-point looks, and they're also giving up points in the paint. Right now, the Pelicans, let me pull it up, have the 6. They're giving up the 6th most points in the paint, 52 per game over the first 3 games. Small sample size. This, I think, will get better. But if the Pelicans are struggling to contain dribble penetration, teams are just getting right in and scoring at the rim, and it's just kind of that easy for them. It's really, really rough and not at all what you want to see. That's killing the Pelicans. Them being in those sorts of rotation situations, cross-matched on guys they don't want to be matched up with, is really hurting them when it comes to this. They need to cut that out. If they contain dribble penetration a little bit better. And look, missing Murray's part of this too. This guy, when he is at his best, is an elite defender. They need someone like him. We saw it even in that first game. Hold on. And they're missing that. So Herb Jones can only do so much. CJ's not a good defender. Zion, again, hasn't been a factor yet and isn't playing particularly well, even if he's got a couple blocks here and there on the defensive side, including a game-sealing block in that first game against the Blazers. You've got to stop the dribble penetration. The team is not doing that. Good news is they can. They have in the past. It wasn't all Dyson Daniels last year. It was the guys that you are seeing out there on the court right now. This is something that should change, something that should get significantly better pretty quickly. Just give a damn, in a sense. Like, care. Put forth the effort here and everything. So they really aren't trying as hard as they need to try on that side of the ball, and I think that's really a big part of it. And that's killing them when it comes to the defensive stuff. Now, let's look at the rebounding here. It is not as simple as they need a center. They got smoked on the offensive glass in this game against the Portland Trail Blazers. The Blazers had, that's the second half. Let me pull up the whole game here. I think it was 22 offensive rebounds. 22 offensive rebounds. They didn't really play a small lineup in this. It was Daniel Tice or Yves Missi. They're playing a center. Now, you can say they're not good centers and they need better centers like that than that. That's I think, a valid and fair thing to say. Let me pull up the second chance points for this game because those are going to be kind of... they each had 25. That's kind of surprising. But giving up 25 second chance points in this game is not good. They were not terminating possessions. Defensive rebounding is defense. It ends the possession. It means you get the ball, and the Pelicans were not doing a good job of that. But it wasn't as much as just they're small and all of those things. They tried a small lineup here and there, and it wasn't particularly great, and they weren't getting the shooting out of there. So until you can really run the small ball lineup you want, don't do it necessarily if you're not going to get the benefits of it. But on the defensive side of the ball with the glass, it happened with Daniel Tice and Yves Missi out there on the court. Those guys were fighting for boards. Tice, again, isn't tall, doesn't really have the size, and the Pelicans are undersized. But when it comes to rebounding, a lot of it is just like carrying and going out and like making it happen. Tice had 3 defensive boards. What did Missi finish with? He finished with 0 on this one. They just need to fight harder, right? Missi isn't undersized, and even if he's a rookie, you can rebound. And he's done a good job of that. What was also happening in this one is the Pelicans were almost getting those defensive boards and then just throwing them away. There was a lot of weirdly bad team defensive rebounding where either they weren't communicating or no one was going for it. And I don't understand why. There were a lot of boards they could have secured and just didn't for a variety of like dumb reasons, in my opinion. That's an effort thing. That's on the coaches to get on this team and be like, you got to communicate. There was at least 2 where 2 Pelicans went for it and they kind of clashed and then the ball went out off of them and it retained it stayed with the Portland Trailblazers, right? Like that's what you were seeing a lot. Some of it was those small lineups or Daniel Tice getting out rebounded or Missi getting rebounded, but that wasn't the only reason. So to me, that doesn't scream, well, JV was the answer, because he wasn't, right? Wouldn't have hurt in this game, but it was a lot of like issues like that. And if they're telling Yves Missi to go, so it comes to a couple of things here, particularly with Missi, and Missi not having a defensive rebound is kind of telling. He's there to block shots. And if the coaching staff is telling him to block shots, it means he's leaving his defender to go and block a shot from behind or from the side as a help defender. That's what we're seeing him do a lot of. Teams aren't particularly challenging him one-on-one. He's making plays out of like pure athleticism and hustle. That means his man's open. Someone needs to come and box that guy out, and they need to discuss this. And it almost feels like they're all not on the same page when it comes to these sorts of things. So if you're running Missi out there and you're telling him like, go and just hunt and shot block and all that, the team needs to know like, this is what he's doing. We need to make up for that. And the team is not doing that. Look, go back and rewatch this game and look at how many times Missi's guy grabbed an offensive board because Missi was trying to block a shot on somebody else. Now, you can tell Missi don't do that, or you can tell the team to do that sort of thing. But Missi's blocking shots, and we like that. We'll talk more about that in the next segment here. That's a big part of it. It also comes to those defensive rotations we were talking about. You know, if a guard's driving in and a big man needs to rotate over to try and contest that shot, they might be out of position for that board if they do contest it. And all of a sudden now it's your guards need to go and team rebound, and Murray's a good rebounder, and he's not playing here. Those are a lot of the issues that you're seeing. And the good news with that is those issues can be fixed. Just try harder. And the fact that they're 1-1, 2-1 on the season, it's not all sky is falling yet. They'll be fine. These are things that can get fixed. We've seen good rebounding from this team at times, even when they're small. They were just dumb. Like, that's the best way I can probably put it. Like, this team was just dumb, it felt like, in this game on Sunday, and just weren't up for it, weren't trying nearly as hard as they needed to try. And that's not what you want to see. There were some rebounding issues that were basically the same in that first game too. At least you go one-on-one, realize this, and know what you need to work on, or at least talk about. Get everyone on the same page. This problem solves itself. I don't think it's as simple as, it's not that I don't think, it's not as simple as like get a better center. It's, no, the team just needs to be better, and they'll be okay when it comes to this, or just get healthy. One of the two. That's always, both, but health is a big part of it. So coming up next, we get an update on DeJounte Murray. I want to look at Jordan Hawkins. I want to look a little bit more at Yves Missi. All of those things. That's coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by Game Time. This is my go-to ticketing app here because I love all of the features from Game Time. And Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. And Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Look, there's a couple of big concerts here over the weekend. You could have probably gotten pretty good seats at the best price you were going to get them. I'll leave it at that for Taylor Swift when it came to using Game Time here. So it's not just Pelicans, right? It's any sort of live event. You can use it for the Pels for sure, but concerts, comedy, theater, more. And maybe you're going to a venue out of town that you've never been before. You get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy, so you're getting the exact tickets that you want. And when I use Game Time, I toggle the all-in pricing. When you toggle that, it shows the total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Join over 10,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well. And subscribe to the Locked On Pelicans newsletter over at LockedOnDaily.com. And now for your second listen today, Locked On Saints. I was over at Po' Boy Fest on Sunday. There were a lot, before the game, a lot of Fire Dennis Allen t-shirts. Are they going to do that? Ross Jackson is going to let you know over at the Locked On Saints podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Make them your second listen today. All right, let's kind of switch gears from this because, look, it's one bad game over 82. You're going to have multiple games like this one on Sunday that are, infuriating. This game was infuriating, right? They just look like they didn't care. And when, if you want to sum this game up, it was just Portland was the aggressor on both offense and defense the whole time. And the Pelicans just didn't seem like they were up for this game, which over an 82-game season is going to happen, right? Like, that's going to happen. That's how it goes. Portland will have these games. Every team, other than maybe Boston, will have these games. You'd like it not to be early on in the season. You'd like it to not be when you're short, a guy like DeJounte Murray and you need him. But these happen. You just don't want to happen all that often. We'll see if this is going to be a trend or not. It has been at times a trend with New Orleans in the past. That could impact Willie Green and other things going forward. But right now, whatever, you just move on and you get to the games against the Golden State Warriors. And if you can go 3-1 on this road trip, 2-2, you're still in a pretty good shape here as Zion, hopefully starts to get going because we're not seeing the best version of this team. And that's something that we're going to also really look at with it, right? Like, are they reaching their full potential? They didn't last year. They do need to this year. We're going to keep monitoring that here. What's going to help them reach their full potential, of course, is players playing well. And at least you're seeing that with a couple of guys here. Jordan Hawkins was, in my opinion, almost the MVP outside of Brandon Ingram's game winner on Friday. He led the team in scoring in that game with, where did the numbers go here? I just closed it out. I think it was 24 points, scoring 22 of them in the second half. His shooting, his aggressiveness, when this team is like begging for points, begging for spacing, is so important. And you're seeing it from him. The growth you're seeing from him is very, very real. And I think you're going to see him be a fixture in lineups. When they did go small in this game, the small ball lineup we're expecting to see is DeJounte Murray, CJ McCollum, Herb Jones, Brandon Ingram, Zion Williamson. You could maybe put Trey in for CJ or Herb, right? But that's somewhere, it's, 5 of those 6 guys in some capacity. When this team went small, knowing that they're missing Murray and Trey Murphy, it was CJ McCollum, Jordan Hawkins, Herb Jones, Brandon Ingram, Zion Williamson. They tried Hawkins in there because they know they need the shooting. They need that spacing. It didn't go the way we wanted it to in this one. Hawkins still did look good off the bench. 17 points on 13 shot attempts, 2 of 4 from 3. You need him to take more than that. They need to manufacture 3-point looks better than they're doing. But I think Hawkins, at least right now, has proven he is like solidly in the rotation and a guy that they feel they can trust on going forward. He's rebounding pretty well. Also, he had 6 defensive boards in this. This is someone they really need to trust with a significant role right now. He played 34 minutes in this game. I do feel they believe that, and I'm excited and happy that they recognize this is a guy we got to trust. The work he did in the offseason, what they wanted him to do, he clearly put in the work, the effort, and it's paying off, and he's solidly in the rotation because of that this year. Yves Missi also, continues to still be impressive. He has grown really fast. He's not fouling like we thought he would. 3 in this game, but he had 2 blocks, 2 steals. He's kind of doing everything. The rebounding will come, but they want him to kind of chase those shots and try and block shots and be that menace down low. I like that, but it might be best to scale him back a little bit, but then you're kind of negating what makes him special. They need to find a way to incorporate him more offensively. That, I think, is the biggest thing. You see teams just not paying attention to Missi or Tice when Zion's out there on the court. You need to find a way to run 4 or 5 pick and roll. So Zion is the ball handler. Missi is the screener trying to go up for a lob when Zion draws 2 to the ball. They need to start running some of those actions so that they can score in the half court if some of the spacing isn't there too. That'll at least keep teams honest when it comes to Zion Williamson. That maybe opens him up as well. But Missi's played pretty well. So has Hawkins. I like to see both of them in the rotation right now. This team, when they get Zion going, when they just, try harder and don't play like they did against the Portland Trailblazers on Sunday, will be just fine. They're 2-1. 2 more games this week, a back-to-back on Tuesday and Wednesday on the road against the Golden State Warriors. We're going to be up late. We'll be recapping it all here on the Locked On Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter, and I'll be back with y'all tomorrow.